All right, yeah, if you're in the wrong room, I don't mind if you have to leave now or during it, it's fine. So we're going to be doing network DLP with Jamf Connect, specific functionality in Jamf Connect, and Cloudflare. Okay, so you don't have to be a customer of Cloudflare to get value out of this session. I'll talk about why a bit later. You don't even have to be a Jamf Connect customer to get value because of the trusted access sort of experience that we're giving all of our customers here as well. So yeah, you should be able to sort of play around with this after the session and see if it's some value to you guys. Oh, another slide about me. That's embarrassing. But I work for Jamf. I came to Jamf through an acquisition of the Wandera company. That was a couple of years ago. So I'm based out of the Bay Area. And Wandera was a company that Jamf acquired for its network controls. So there's going to be a heavy emphasis in this session around network. Of course, DLP isn't all about network, and I'll talk about that as well. But yeah, that's me. I lead the sales engineering team. I like long walks on the beach, that sort of stuff. OK, and this is the agenda that we've got between you guys and lunch. A little bit of an intro to DLP. As I was going through my slides last night, I realized that it's sort of, what's the term? It's telling some of you guys how to suck eggs. Like DLP means different things to different organizations and different stakeholders. But I'll sort of talk a little bit about my experience and what DLP means to our customers and some of the checkboxes that they need to hit for their DLP use cases. We'll then talk about Jamf's device DLP controls, so not pertaining to network, but some of the things that you can do on the device and what exists today in various different frameworks to restrict the leaking of information. And then we'll get into the meat of this, which is the additional network controls that are possible and how to configure those controls specifically with our Cloudflare partnership in this session. OK, so this was the slide where I was just like, am I going to talk to a room about what is DLP, what is data loss prevention or protection? I always get those things muddled up sometimes. I think about the nirvana state when it comes to DLP, where some security professionals are thinking in terms of they want to be able to block a certain string, a certain set of characters from ever existing or leaving a device. And that could be a credit card number. It could be a social security pattern. It could be a customer identity record. And there's various different ways you can go about doing that. You can stop it from being entered on the device. You can stop it from being viewed on the device. If it does exist on the device, you could look at stopping it from ever leaving a device. We, of course, get into a scenario where accessibility and usability really butts up against that requirement. So yes, we're going to be talking a lot about things like cut and paste controls and network controls and stopping someone from printing. It doesn't stop someone from taking a photo of that device or writing down information. So there's a certain limit in where you can really go with DLP. Certain consumer apps have functionality that the kids of today are quite used to in terms of you can't take screenshots from Snapchat or something like that. There's ways around these things. There's ways around using another device, routing the device. There's just different ways of getting around it. So I don't think as DLP as necessarily a moat around a castle that's impenetrable, but it's something that really helps augment and complement what else you might be doing with on-device security and protection. If someone wishes to defeat DLP, they probably will. But we have some controls to sort of identify when someone is going around the controls that you put in place. So that's what I like to think about this. I'm going to be showing you a bit later some controls that are extremely powerful. But when you think about how they're going to be implemented in day-to-day use, just think about what is the use case that you have. And again, the change on the usability of the device to really look for certain strings and characters, is that something you need to be doing? But anyway, there's a lot of reasons behind needing to do DLP. It might be regulation in your industry, what your company's doing. It might be a requirement that you want to have flexibility of doing something like this in the future. You might not have a requirement today to block a particular string of characters, but knowing that that functionality exists within a configuration might be something that you want to do. So that's it. That's the DLP side of things. This is a slide that goes into the DLP capabilities that already exist today without the network capabilities. And so the first one here is around the endpoint data controls. This is a combination of a configuration that you can do within Jamf Pro, Jamf School, the MDM, as well as Jamf Protect for macOS. A lot more detail can be found on trusted.jamf.com. In fact, a lot of this presentation you can get at trusted.jamf.com. And it will go into more detail about hardening the device, limiting based on MDM protocols and other device-based protocols to stop a device from being configured in a way that would make it easy to leak information from the device. So some examples we've got here are copy and paste controls. Copy and paste controls are being used a lot more now because they can actually be used on iOS devices in a user enrollment scenario as well. So you can have the different partitions of the device. They have a partition within the clipboard as well. Again, it doesn't stop someone from writing down something. So you've really got to think about the usability in terms of users being frustrated that they can't cut and paste between different personas. But that might be a control that you want to put in place. There's airdrop controls. There's ways of disabling the ability to do screenshots and screen recordings. Again, doesn't stop someone from taking a VCR, I suppose, and plugging it into their monitor or something like that. And then Jamf Protect for macOS has a lot of controls around removable media. So SD cards, USB drives, things like that. It's not perfect, right? You know, there's going to be ways of attaching drives that are not being detected. But again, we're just thinking about some things that we can put in place to give you guys controls to somewhat ensure that it's a burden to extract information from your devices. It's not just a case of plugging in an SD card and copying a few files across. It's not just a case of airdropping files or taking some screenshots and emailing them. So you can put all of these device-based controls in place to really restrict the capability of a malicious or an unbeknownst user from extracting information from that device. The next control that exists without this Cloudflare integration, it's not necessarily on device, it does actually use our network control, is what we call data in motion. And this is a service from Jamf Protect today, which we call network threat prevention, but you can also enact a policy. So network threat prevention uses DNS controls on a device. And what it's there to do as a baseline is restrict the ability for someone to access a malicious website, phishing websites, command and control resources. It gives more hygiene to the network pipe that's coming in and out of that Apple device. But you can also add your own policy in terms of resources, websites, applications that could be accessed over the network. So a use case here is restricting access to Dropbox and other file-sharing websites. So that's again, preventing data from being able to easily be leaked. You've limited what they can do from a hardware standpoint, and then you also limit what they can do from a data in motion standpoint, from a network standpoint. And then lastly, we've got data in rest. And really, this is about ensuring that the device is authorized to access that information in the first place. So a lot of you will be using SaaS-based services where you're holding data, CRMs and so on, or even if they're on-prem, and using some of the tenets of trusted access, you can ensure that only trusted devices and authorized users can access that information. So again, that's ensuring that these devices have not been compromised. That's ensuring that these devices have users on them who are authorized to access these services. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this session. There were some sessions earlier this week on that, but that's our Connect ZTNA product in terms of trusted access. And again, more information is available at trusted.jamf.com on those things. You probably have seen this, I'm going to call it a hexagon. I don't think it formally is. It's a square, isn't it? But there's 6 parts to trusted access that you guys have seen over this week. The rest of the session isn't going to go into enroll and automate too much. That's the management side of the device. But as you just saw, it's an important concept in DLP to manage and have a workflow around the device. Interestingly, I'm also not going to be going into security or prevention. That, again, is a very important part of DLP. That's covered by our Protect service. And it's important to ensure that a device hasn't been compromised on the network, that the device can't access easily, readily available file-sharing websites. But the focus of this session is actually going to go into our access portion. Now, ordinarily, our access portion is there to provide tangible throughput to applications and services that either live on the internet or live on-prem in your networks. as a sort of a VPN type replacement. But what we can do, this is a service from Jamf Connect, Jamf Connect ZTNA, is you actually have extremely strong policy control, not just in terms of the input, and by input I mean which device, where the user is, what the risk score is of the user, and so on. And not just necessarily the destination, so what resource are they trying to access, what website are they trying to go to. But we can even control the routing on the way out of the Jamf Security Cloud. Now, but most of the time, that routing is either going to be to the internet, assuming they tick all those boxes. Yeah, they can go to the internet and they can access that resource. It might be back inside your network, so that might be via an IPsec tunnel or something similar like that. But in this example, we're going to look at what happens if we reroute traffic selectively to a different cloud provider. And in this case, we're going to be rerouting traffic through Cloudflare's service before it propagates to the internet. So this is using Jamf Connect, the ZTNA service, to redirect traffic through Cloudflare. And again, as I said earlier, you can do this with other cloud services. You can do this with other points of presence. But Jamf Connect ZTNA allows you to have as many different routing options as you want. We'll handle ourselves if you need to go directly to the internet. We give you many different points of presence. It can be handled automatically in terms of the nearest data center for egress. But you can also add this integration as well within Jamf Security Cloud. So there's a lot that you can do with this, and lunch is 30 minutes away. So we're only going to look at 3 of them in today's session. And these are actually detailed at length at trusted.jamf.com. The first one's going to be deep packet inspection. I think this is the fundamental DLP network use case that everybody thinks about. Like if you go inside a packet, what can you identify within that packet? And then based on policy, can we restrict information? I mentioned earlier on, like, personal identifiable information, a regular expression. I'll go through some examples that we've got there. Cloudflare actually has support for the Microsoft labels as well that you can tag on different files. So there's lots of cool things you can do when you go inside a packet and you start to inspect it. We'll also go into RBI, or remote browser isolation, and sort of how that can be interesting to use. The portability across different devices is quite interesting there. And then something that's relatively new, I hadn't come across this for the last year or so, is SaaS tenancy control. And that's the ability to have different policy for SaaS applications like Gmail that you might be using within your organization, but you want to restrict access to the personal side of Gmail. It's very difficult to do because these SaaS applications often use the same domain for the personal side of things as the corporate side of things. So I'll go into more detail about that in a moment. But the deep packet inspection. So this is what it looks like from the Cloudflare side of things. Again, let's just think back to that diagram I showed earlier. We're going to be redirecting traffic from Jamf Trust through Jamf Security Cloud, selectively deciding which traffic we want to route through Cloudflare. You could route all the traffic through Cloudflare. You could say every bit and byte that comes out of this device, I want to also send through Cloudflare for deeper inspection. And in Cloudflare, you define which domains you want to do additional inspection on. It could be all of them. You define a DLP profile. They have some really cool built-in profiles. Can't quite see what's on there, but from memory, there's things around regular expressions for social security numbers, all that sort of credit card information. There's some cool tests that you can run. You can also add your own regular expressions as well. And then you attach that DLP profile to your egress policy within Cloudflare, and voila, you have network DLP, deep packet inspection control. So I've got a video of this. This website, dlptest.com, I find it great. Often I'm sort of like, how do I test DLP stuff? They've got a whole list of different, you see here, there's credit cards, there's passport numbers, there's social security numbers. So I can go ahead, I can grab a credit card. Doesn't work, I've tried it on different sites. But I can post that information up in an HTTP post, and that can get blocked by the policy that I've got in place. Now, there's a lot that's going on there that the end user doesn't see for you guys to be aware of as admins. Yes, I'm redirecting traffic, but how was I able to intercept traffic that's going over SSL? You do need to install a root certificate on the device from Cloudflare or from the network provider to be able to break that open. Now, you can do HTTP DLP without a root certificate. But I have to let you know that 95+% of traffic that we see in Jamf Security Cloud nowadays is encrypted. It's over SSL. So you're not really going to do much unless you add the root certificate on there. Now, within the Cloudflare console and also within Jamf Security Cloud, you can select, as I mentioned, which domains of traffic go through this process. So you could decide to only do this for file sharing resources or other domains rather than just have everything go through here. But it is something for you to consider. This is weighing your DLP options. If you want to do network control, you do need to reroute the traffic, and you do need to have a certificate installed and trusted on the device. Jamf Pro, Jamf School can do that for you. MDMs can push down a certificate and it can be trusted. But it's more a meta conversation of, do you want to be unencrypting certain traffic that otherwise would be encrypted? So that's the classic deep packet inspection, DPI, from Cloudflare. There's lots of other options in terms of regular expressions and pattern matching that they can do. But that's on trusted.jamf.com, as I said. Now let's do remote browser isolation. Now, a classic use case for RBI, remote browser isolation, is a security sandbox. It's kind of neat if you think about it. Like, rather than having the local browser, the WebKit framework, render that website with all its overhead and burden and potential exploits, you have that be rendered in the cloud. And really, all you're seeing on the device is a facsimile. You're just seeing a screenshot of a browser that doesn't actually exist on the device. And so there are security benefits in doing that. But when we think about it from a DLP point of view, you can add additional type controls in terms of cut pasting, screenshots, printing. There's many different options that might not be available on the device itself, or this gives you more granular options. So what I mentioned earlier about restricting cut, paste, control, and so on, you're really doing that across an entire container. When you do it in remote browser isolation, you can pick the category, you can pick the type of website, you can pick even the time of day and things like that, which are pretty cool. So this is RBI, remote browser isolation. It's a very similar experience across all platforms. So there isn't, from what I can tell in testing this, there isn't really any dependency on any modern operating system in terms of the browser that they're using, at least in Cloudflare's implementation. They do a really good job of making sure this is extremely portable across different browsers. But here, I'm hosting a website. It's just some Lipso text out here. And we're having a look here at what if a user tried to do various different things from a DLP standpoint that were being restricted. So they try and cut and paste. And again, the native controls are not there because you're not really on a web page. You're on a virtual machine that you're sort of being rendered there. So they can't cut and paste. I think one of the other controls that we've got here is when they try to print, they can't print what they see. It doesn't stop someone taking a picture. Doesn't stop someone from writing down the text that they see. But again, it's just getting rid of the easy convenience of someone being able to take information off a device that you might have concerns about them doing, and you can restrict keyboard controls and all sorts of things, which is pretty cool. So we've done deep packet inspection, we've done remote browser isolation. The last one, which I kind of find the coolest, because again, I didn't know this existed until quite recently, is SaaS tenancy control. And again, let's just think about this use case. Let's think about your organization might use Box as a file sharing resource. We actually do sometimes at Jamf. And so you might have corporate accounts, corporate logins, but it shares the same domains with other logins. A consumer can go and sign up for a free Box account. And it's going to be very difficult for you to understand when you see mounds of information, gigs of data being sent to Box. Was that the corporate account? Or is that a personal account? Same with Dropbox, same with Gmail, Google Drive, Azure. They all just share different domains. The answer to this, instead of all these SaaS providers saying, OK, we'll give you your own subdomain, they're not doing that. The answer instead is they have added support for an additional header that you can provide to restrict login only to your domain. So we have to still, it's sort of DLP in reverse, but if you bear with me, we still have to do this rerouting of the traffic. We still have to have the certificate so we can unencrypt the payload. But instead of inspecting the payload, we inject a header that you define in the Cloudflare console. So I think in this example, I'm injecting a header for Google Apps for mycompanydomain.com. And so this is going to restrict the Google login pages to only allow me to log in with Google accounts from mycompany.account.com. It's not going to allow generic Gmail logins. it's not going to allow someone to log in from a different Google accounts, Google Apps login. And again, this is really the only way of doing this. If you block gmail.com, you've blocked your corporate access to Gmail. But if you add this header, you can restrict access. You can have multiple different headers. And again, trusted.jamf.com has got more examples of different SaaS applications that support these SaaS tenancy control headers, and more are being added over time. So just to see that example here, I think I've got to press it one more time. Here we go. So someone trying to log into Gmail. Again, all this traffic's being routed through Jamf Trust. Hey, this is me doing a personal Gmail account. I hit next, and you get this message that you've probably never seen before. You can't log in because of a network control. So that SaaS tenancy header is being added to the traffic, and then Google has promised to restrict access if they see that SaaS tenancy header coming from the network. Yeah, I think that's, and again, if I go through the corporate login, it lets me log in. I think I had Cuttaford.com as a corporate Gmail account. So I'm not aware of any other way of doing this, and it's to control a lot of our customers are like, what do? We use SaaS controls. We have SaaS applications out there. I have to allow access to Gmail or to Dropbox. I'm not picking on Google. There's lots of them. But how can I restrict access from a personal use on certain devices at certain times? This is a way of doing it using this Cloudflare integration. So in terms of setting this up, here's what you need to have. You need to have Jamf Connect ZTNA. It's part of Jamf Connect. Everyone here today should have the capability of going through Jamf account and provisioning Jamf Protect, which in turn provisions Jamf Security Cloud. There's lots of different Jamf services here, but you should be able to get access to Jamf Connect ZTNA to allow you to selectively reroute traffic through Jamf Trust. You do need, in the examples I've ran through, Cloudflare ZTNA. There's an email address there if you want to sort of get a free trial from them. The concepts here, though, can be used, as I said, from other sorts of cloud providers. You can redirect traffic. You can do deep packet inspection on other services. And then you also need an MDM Pro, Now, School, whatever, to actually push out Jamf Trust, to push out the certificates as well that are going to be required for all of this inspection. And again, regardless of if you're doing remote browser isolation or deep packet inspection or SaaS tenancy control, you still need the certificate because you need to be able to inject headers or redirect traffic. And without a certificate, you can't do that. Ordinarily, Jamf security controls and network controls don't require you to do a certificate because you do everything through DNS. But this deeper level of packet inspection does require an SSL certificate to be there. OK, that is it for slides. I'm not sure what we have from a question standpoint. I know that there's an app. So in the JNUC app, you can ask questions. I'm sure there's thousands of people watching live asking questions. Or if anyone wants to put their hand up, Hector's has a mic, and he can go around if anyone's got any questions. Or do we have any? Do you know if any came from the app?
We have questions.
OK, we'll go here.
Yeah, I have one question. So we are Google Shop. So we already have established DLPs on the Google side. Will this overlap, or will this reinforce what we already have?
OK, so yeah, if you're a Google Shop.
Let's repeat the question, though.
Yeah. So if you're a Google customer, you have Google Apps, Google Domains, and so on, and you have some DLP controls from Google, does this overlap, or is it different? From what I know, this doesn't really overlap. The Google DLP controls are around when someone is logged in to Google. When you're logged into Gmail, you're logged into Google Drive, they have controls in their SaaS service to stop someone from taking information and copying it across. But it doesn't stop somebody from taking data on the device and logging in on a separate Gmail account and then punting the information elsewhere. So this really augments the controls that you have within a cloud service, but not just this, the things I mentioned earlier about the device controls as well. All these things are sort of necessary to sort of have that defense in depth. But yeah, it's not quite the same thing as SaaS-based controls, which are very important as well, to have controls in the cloud as well. Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the questions we have is, what challenges have you encountered with SSL packet inspection via Cloudflare? For example, with GitHub or Linux repositories?
Yeah, there are a lot of exceptions that Cloudflare recommends as well in terms of applications and domains that don't sit pretty with you inspecting their traffic. Generally speaking, browsers are okay with it. But native applications, command line tools, they're going to throw up a trust issue with different certificates because they have pinned the certificate. So this has to be, generally, this is used selectively and within browsers only, not within command line tools or applications.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other one is, can Cloudflare inspect or prohibit HTTPS traffic, for example, SSH? And I think that sort of answers.
Right, yeah, so other protocols, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. This is just for HTTPS traffic.
Okay.
Today. I don't think there's a capability of doing other protocols. I mean, Jamf Trust can reroute traffic regardless, but I think what I just showed you is an HTTP policy. The S is implied on the Cloudflare side of things. Yeah.
Perfect.
The concern there is, a user. The concern there is a user exfiltrating data, say on their local home network. So they copy a bunch of corporate data, they SSH it all to a personal device sitting next to them. That's the concern. We need some protection there.
Yeah. I think, as I think it through very quickly, using Jamf Trust network controls, we could try to restrict that SSH from even being allowed to occur. But if it has to occur, I'm not aware of any deep packet inspection that can take place over an SSH session using this. I mean, we could measure that traffic was there and a certain amount went through, but I don't think that the deep packet inspection works on other protocols.
Or a block.
I think the block is possible, the outright block, but it wouldn't be selective. It would just be an outright block. Yeah. Yeah.
You block access to your 192 networks.
If that's
How would you route to an IP address? Yeah, sure. The remote browser isolation you showed off.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually seen that before. Do you need the SSL inspection set up as well?
You do,
Okay.
annoyingly. The redirection piece that happens, if you don't, you can do this without the certificate, and the user's just going to get a whole load of SSL certificate
complaints,
errors. Yeah, it's just the redirection. Interestingly, just as a footnote, until recently, Jamf Trust used to also have a certificate just for the redirection of a block page message to say, hey, you've been blocked for something. That is kind of going away. Like natively, iOS 17 and Sonoma just support a block page, so we don't need the overhead of doing that. But yeah, even just to do, the HTTP protocol doesn't have a redirect that can take place in the headers. You sort of have to do it in the, well, it's in the headers, but it's already encrypted. It's too late then. Yeah. Okay, we're done there?
Yeah.
All right, I'll stick around for 15 minutes or so because lunch isn't ready yet. But yeah, thanks for your time, and I hope you had a good JNUC. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thanks, Hector.